Well, after being asked roughly, I don't know, maybe, and this is not an exaggeration, 2,000 times over the course of a couple months in my Twitch chat, I finally decided to go back and revisit Battlefield 1, and I think there was so much demand for this because people are just bored of Battlefield 2042. In fact, I think people are bored of Battlefield in general, but particularly Battlefield 2042, so I figured I'd go back and revisit really the last decent-ish Battlefield game ever made, which is now a staggering 8 years old. Yes, you heard me correctly, ladies and gentlemen, and that might be a shock to some of you. Battlefield 1 released in 2016. Oh, Battlefield, we are truly in the dark ages, aren't we? So, without further ado, let's get into the video. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I stream every single day on twitch.tv/enders, and I stream on this YouTube channel as well. For those of you wondering why I didn't post for a couple days, my house was hit with a catastrophic storm, and we were on half power for about 4 days. I couldn't stream, couldn't make YouTube videos, and I also could not work on the Battlefield 2042 review, which I still plan to have out, honestly, in a couple days here at the end of June, so turn on notifications for that. You are not going to want to miss that. So, I revisited Battlefield 1 after a bunch of people basically begged me for like months on end, and, well, it's kind of interesting, my experience with this game this time around. It's very hit and miss, you see, whenever you come back to PC, especially if you play in North America, because North American PC, there really aren't that many servers. It's not the case in EU or if you're on console. But my particular situation with Battlefield 1 is that there aren't that many servers, and the game is kind of dead-ish in North America. But nevertheless, I managed to get into some servers, and the first thing that really hits you, coming from any other Battlefield game to this game, is how different it is. It really does smack you directly in the face. I mean, the movement feels completely weird. The gunplay you have to get used to. Suppression hit me in the face. Oh my god, I haven't experienced actual suppression in, well, I guess 8 years, and let me just tell you right now, I do not miss it. But going back into this game after not playing it for quite a long time, I kind of went into it remembering that people really do consider this game, Battlefield 1, to be one of, if not the greatest Battlefield games of all time. And I disagree heavily. I played Battlefield 1 when it came out, obviously, and getting back into it, I really hold the same opinions that I held back then. I think that Battlefield 1 definitely had potential to be the greatest Battlefield game of all time, but a few key things kind of screwed it, in my opinion. But let's not talk about the negatives first, let's talk about the positives. The UI in this game is such a breath of fresh air. You can actually customize things. You can change your sight zoom. Oh my god, what a foreign concept. The minimap is nice, everything's clean, obviously the hit marker sound is pretty satisfying, and the kill sound. It's, generally speaking, just a pleasant experience to look at Battlefield 1, okay? It really is. I'm not one for graphics, I really do not care. Let me emphasize that. I do not care how games look. However, Battlefield 1 definitely hit the nail on the head in terms of how a Battlefield game should aim to look in order to sort of mold to the setting it's going for. It nailed the setting and the look and the feel of World War I. And that is why Battlefield 1 for many people isn't really meant to be a game. It's kind of meant to be an experience. Now, in my opinion, that's an absolutely ridiculous way to look at a multiplayer FPS game, but, you know, I can sort of understand it, kind of. And in general, I think the things that really sold Battlefield 1 to a lot of people is that sort of visual experience, atmospheric, immersive aspect of the game. However, when you take a look at the gameplay itself, which is, in my opinion, the cold hard facts, how the game actually plays, I don't think this game aged well at all. In fact, I think it aged like milk. And I could sit here and number off a bunch of things that I would change about Battlefield 1 just to make it that much better, but the one thing that sticks out for me is the fact that Battlefield 1 utterly destroyed its movement, seemingly just to satisfy a community of players that couldn't aim at the broadside of a barn to save themselves. And even when the developers nerfed this movement, the player base still couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So what is the point of Battlefield nerfing the movement in Battlefield 1? I genuinely couldn't tell you. Some people argue that the slide in Battlefield 1 didn't fit the theme of the game and it looked silly. Well, I would argue that the setting of a game doesn't dictate the movement of the game. See Battlefield 5. People like Battlefield 5's movement. And that was a World War II game. I guess sliding wasn't invented until World War II. Isn't that right, guys? But all jokes aside, taking a look at Battlefield 1's movement system in depth, you have very little to utilize. The slide was the only thing that aggressive players could utilize in order to gain an advantage in gunfights, and DICE said, you know what, we're going to listen to a bunch of crybabies, and we're going to delete this from the game. And in doing so, they essentially ruined the depth of Battlefield 1's close quarter gameplay, bringing the game to an absolute standstill. And them nerfing Battlefield 1's movement affects the game in more ways than people realize. It affects your ability to dodge shots, okay? In a game where snipers are easily the strongest weapon category, there being no movement in the game makes fighting snipers an absolute nightmare. Also, with no movement being in the game is essentially completely positional. And when your team is getting steamrolled, there is no position because the position is constantly lost, and you can't hold the position because there's no skill gap because they removed the slide. In certain situations where I would be essentially guaranteed to at least kill 3, 4, 5 people, I would only get 1 or 2 because at a certain point you simply get overwhelmed and you can't avoid it. And no amount of positioning will ever help you in that situation. You need other mechanics. One other thing I noticed while playing Battlefield 1 for the first time in a while was, at least in my experience, and please comment down below, maybe I just got unlucky, the server balance was super one-sided. Maybe I was playing on servers where, you know, say clans of people stack on one team, but I don't think I was, and the games that I was playing were essentially decided based on what team I was put on. If I was put on the team that had the steamrollers on them, then I would steamroll. If I was placed on the team that was getting steamrolled, then there was no fun to be had ever, and we would constantly lose every flag, and it was just incredibly frustrating. I do have to say, I don't really remember Battlefield 1 playing like that. I don't really ever complain about team balancing or really anything like that because, generally speaking, I can deal with it, but this particular play session was pretty rough. Maybe I should just switch teams, which I totally forgot you could do in the first place. Another thing I wanted to mention was the gunplay of Battlefield 1 hits you in the face at first. You really have to get used to it, but once you get used to it, I actually quite enjoy it. I like Battlefield 1's gunplay. I think it makes a lot of sense. I know it's a big point of contention. People always like to bring up stupid, made-up, fake terms like quote-unquote random bullet deviation, and that's just, it's literally fake. It's utilized by people that don't know what they're talking about. The correct term is spread, and the fact of the matter is Battlefield 1 and every other Battlefield game has spread. It's just, the difference is Battlefield 1's gunplay utilizes spread in multiple different ways. The light machine guns have reverse spread, so you start out inaccurate, then you get more accurate as you shoot. The self-loading rifles for the medic class, you basically just become more inaccurate as you shoot, which is pretty standard. And in general, I just think the gunplay is quite awesome. I think what people hate is actually suppression. Suppression amplifies the gunplay being inaccurate, okay? Because people get rewarded for missing you, which is the dumbest concept I have ever frickin' seen in my life. I certainly hope that Battlefield completely steers away from having suppression in the game for the next Battlefield title because I really did not miss playing against it. So overall, I just think Battlefield 1 doesn't really satisfy what I look for in a video game, just to be completely honest with you. I think the decisions they made in that game really aged poorly. I think the game in general is meant to be more of an experience rather than a game itself. And yeah, I guess it's just not for me. And that's really unfortunate because, like I said previously in this video, I really do think this game had the potential to be the greatest Battlefield of all time, but I do think some of the decisions they made heavily hindered it. So, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm definitely going to be covering multiple different FPS games, such as Delta Force Hawk Ops, The Finals, X Defiant, the new Call of Duty, yada yada yada. If you like FPS content, this is the channel for you. Be sure to subscribe. Join the Discord. All links in the description. I will see you guys in the next one.
We have taken objective.